So then when these shows on the road gathered momentum, initially we went from Oxford to Cambridge and London University places, but also the ICA in London and a place called the Gabberbockers Common Room in London, which was set up by experimental writers, international writers who'd known Kurt Schwitters, the great inventor of collage or master of collage, and were exposed to different influences like European experimentalism, sound poetry, which Schwitters again pioneered, and hung out with jazz musicians in the London night scene of the early 60s, the Establishment Club, Ronnie Scott's The Americana, and mingled with these many different kinds of people from different backgrounds, countries, classes, environments, traditions, and enjoyed finding out that on this planet wasn't only Ronnie Scott but also Dizzy Gillespie, who I met in an all-night jazz club frequented mainly by American GIs in 1960, and I was then bearded and bedraggled and full of dope smoke, and he came up to me and said, "Man, you look like early pictures of Christ!" Which, of course, amused me, partly because I'd grown up in Orthodox Judaism, where Christ was just a kind of heretical rabbi not to be emulated, except later I discovered that a lot of the best things in Judaism, like Hillel, a rabbi who said, "Love thy neighbour as thyself," and Jesus as a rabbi picked up some of these better vibes of the terrible bestial primitive mythology of the Old Testament, which we're still stuck with, along with allies great, etc. So being in this melting pot of diverse cultures and cultural players in the diverse media, my friends and I got more and more confirmed in the sense of the arts as one big mixing bowl, one continuum from ancient times to the future, linking Sappho and Homer and Beowulf with the guys who were going up in Sputnik and thinking about landing on the moon, and scientists investigating bubble chambers. And so we felt in accord with the space age and with embracing absolutely everything, having come out of the monochrome cocoon of post-war conformism and repression and Cold War, sexless hung-upness, brilliantly exposed in things like Allen Ginsberg's Howl and Waiting for Godot by Beckett, and we all felt we were in this truly brave new world without frontiers, so that all the old blinkered blame reserve that was still being extolled and perpetuated by the likes of Kingsley Amis and Philip Larkin, who hated abroad and pretended it was a joke, but really were quite xenophobic and uninterested in anything to do with experiment and open forms and loving thy neighbour, etc., and keeping up the old British famous reserve and reticent probity and all these phrases that old-type critics who wanted to keep poetry in the nationalist insular game reserve continued to use that terminology, which was very busy excluding the main public of the planet from being allowed into its elite portals, quadrangles. So we overtook all that, we felt, by starting live new departures, jazz poetry, super jam, poetry Olympics, festivals, the big event at Albert Hall in 1965, which was filmed by Peter Whitehead as Holy Communion, holy with a W. And a lot of people saw that film, apart from the 7,000 to 8,000 who attended it. So in June 1965 there was a kind of confirmation and apotheosis of what had been building throughout the previous 5 to 8 years, with more and more readings by more and more poets and performers who liked bringing poetry into play with music and song.